G'day guys, Adam Grocke from Johnston Grocke with Nick Rusling as well from Johnston Grocke. This video is a deep dive into how to make money from property development and focusing just on residential development. So I just wanted to start with probably some of the key things. So this is a high risk strategy, Nick?
Definitely. I mean, I suppose we touched on in the last video, obviously the buy and hold, which is your more traditional. This is probably higher risk, but higher reward too.
Absolutely, yep. And what I like about property development is you're actually taking control of the gains in property, whereas if a buy and hold strategy, you're really just waiting for the economy and the market to shift, whereas property development is actually quite a deliberate focus point on a property to maximise the value of that via subdividing and building and selling.
Yep. And as you touched on there, sorry, it's probably key to make note of property development's much more short term. So we emphasise really the longevity that you need in the buy and hold strategy. In this, it's much more sort of quick turnover, 18 months, 2 years sort of thing.
Absolutely. So time in market is critical for both. But time in market for buy and hold is your longevity in the property market to see a couple of cycles.
Yep.
Whereas development is how can you complete the development as quickly as possible, so your time in the market is as short as possible. So I think one of the key things to understand is, the first thing is, why are you developing? And we keep coming back to this why. Why are you doing it? What do you want to achieve by it? What are your expected profit returns? And what is your risk appetite? Because as we mentioned, high risk but high rewards. And people can lose tens of thousands of dollars very quickly in property development.
Yeah.
So the first rule of thumb is identify why. What are you trying to achieve? How long do you want to hold this property for? What do you want to develop it into? And then the first step, I think, after that is really making sure you buy for the right price, isn't it?
Exactly. Buying for the right price, because stamp duty in SA quite notoriously high. So therefore, you're 20 or 30 grand behind already. So you're not going to make that money back, in the sale of the property, obviously. So you've got to find other ways to make up those gains.
Yep. And look, when we're talking about how much money you can make from developing property, it's kind of how long's a piece of string. But a rule of thumb is 1 into 2s don't generally give you much of a return on your investment unless it's a higher end 1 into 2.
Yep.
1 into 3, you really should be looking at a minimum probably 120,000 up to 150,000 as a profit. If you're talking 1 into 4, 5 and 6, well then you really want to be looking north of 200, 250, 300,000.
Because again, the more sort of blocks you're putting on there, the higher the risk and everything. You've got to be able to sell those blocks. Holding costs, they're much higher in those sort of scenarios.
Absolutely. And so also the cost of building 2-story is a lot more than building single story. So the next thing you've got to look for is you've got to find your site. Do your research. If you don't know what you're doing, engage an expert. And I just can't stress that enough. I even engage an expert to go and find my development sites. And the reason being is because that's a way that I can mitigate the risk. It's higher risk strategy. How do I mitigate that risk? And I get an expert, a professional, go and find those sites for me and actually do the development as well. So you've got to find the site and buy it for the right price.
Because the hidden costs in development are what trip everyone up. So I know you emphasise it to the clients that it's a really big thing to have that big buffer.
Absolutely.
That account behind you with the money sitting in there. So when those unexpected costs come up, you can wear that expense. There's plenty of people that end up walking away from developments even behind, not even just breaking even, because they didn't allow for those unexpected and hidden costs, and it's because they didn't seek the advice up front and didn't know all the things involved.
Absolutely, and I actually just recently experienced it with one of our properties in Mulberry, where we had extended delays with council in a new policy area, and it cost us 25 grand just like that, because we had to hold the property for a longer period of time. If you don't have those buffers, that emergency money you can draw on, then you've got to sell. You're a forced seller of a development site undeveloped, and you're not going to get the price you want for it. So I think the next thing is make sure when you've secured a property, do your feasibility. That is hands down the next most important thing you need to do.
And do it right.
And do it right. Do it to the level of detail you should, not on the back of a napkin, not on I think it's going to cost that much. You've got to go down to the dollar.
And it's planning for that worst case scenario. So you're planning for if everything goes, as slow as it can and all these sort of things. So you have your best case scenario numbers, your worst case scenario numbers, and then if you fall anywhere in the middle of that you'll walk out okay. But anywhere behind, obviously, you've got to know what that bottom dollar mark is.
We've got a feasibility that you can download as a tool, so we'll make sure we put that in the link here, so download that. Again, you've got to make sure that you do your research. Speak to the council, have a look, make sure you cover all the fees and charges. You need to make sure that the feasibility is accurate, because that's what you're actually relying on to take the next step to complete the purchase on that site and go through with the development. I think the next thing is you really need to maximise the value of the site. And the thing that a lot of people miss with maximising the value of the site is they'll go and talk to a builder, and the builder is incentivised to build a larger square metre house and not necessarily building the house that has the highest return per square metre from a sale value. And so I think that's something really to make sure you do your research, and when you are speaking to your planners and your designers, make sure that you're not over-capitalising the cost of the build, because you might build a 400 square metre house that's going to sell for the same price as if you built a 350 square metre house. You need to build for what the market's going to pay, and that also includes the spec. Don't do a high spec in an area that's not going to pay high spec.
No, and I think that, again, coming back to that advice part, having a third-party consultant walk you through this process, they don't have any invested interest in what you're building. Exactly. Take that emotion right out of it. They're not looking at a dollar figure, anything like that. So have someone that knows what they're talking about, knows what they're doing, that can look at these things and go, why do we need all this? Why are we spending 20 grand on granite bench tops? What are we bothering with those things for?
Yeah, and will your target market pay for it at the end when you've got that? Now, if you can, the best type of development to buy is a property that you can chop up into multiple sites and then sell that land as a house on land package. And the difference with that is you're actually walking out as a developer, selling that land, and then the purchaser engages the builder to do the contract. So you're actually walking away with your profits at land division, right? The other option is you have to go and you actually have to build that house out and sell it on completion. Right, which means you've got all the holding costs for the 12 months worth of construction, and you wear the risks during that as well, because you have to fund that. So
you're heavily reliant in these scenarios on third parties then, so your builders, on council, all those sort of things to be sort of approved along the way, and you put all of that in their hands. So you look at the weather today, for example, we're looking at pouring with rain. That's
supposed to be summer.
Yeah, exactly, and so the builders would be thinking they can be building right now. However, this is slowing them up. So these sort of things got to be taken into account.
Yeah. So best development, really, if you're a first-time developer, get your advice, make sure you do that, engage a development consultant who's independent, who's not backed by a builder, because then they're going to give you an independent view. If you can, choose a site where you'll sell the land and exit it, land at subdivision, and then the purchasers will engage the builders. If you have to build all the way through, just do your numbers, make sure you've got all your holding costs and everything built in, and try and turn that around as quickly as possible.
Exactly right.
As a general rule of thumb, if you're going to do development, you need about 150,000 worth of cash or equity to do a development. That's sort of even sometimes bringing it on the skinny side.
Yep. So
anything north of that is a really good start, and that also depends on the size of the project you're doing as well.
Exactly right. No, look, I think that we put the blog up on here. You'll see the link below. We really emphasise in their advice. Now, that's not just coming back to us. That's seeking advice from a whole range of professionals. We've got a really good network here of people that we work with. So just really make sure that you sit down, run through it all. So you've got to understand that upfront first. You don't want any of those hidden things popping up in the middle.
Another big change for developers that's recently happened is GST, so the conveyancers need to hold some of that GST now, which has been a significant change. That can tighten up some cash flow, so if you're not aware of that and you're a developer, make sure you are aware of that. That has actually tipped some projects or made them go off the rails, so that's something really important.
Well, you now don't have that 3-month sort of buffer for cash flow to get that back to the tax office. It's gone straight away, so Exactly.
Sure. Hopefully this has been useful. Download the tool, read the blog. If you've got any questions, more than happy to help out, guys, and have a great day.
Thanks.